Hey, welcome back to Wildly Curious Season 2, Episode 1.
Hello.
Have we missed anything since last time we talked?
No.
No, nothing's happened?
No.
Well, it's funny you should say that because this is going to be...
Is it funny?
No, it's not really funny. But, you know, that's one of those things that people say.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It's what's known as a euphemism or expression. It's funny you say that. I mean, it's not like, I can't believe you said that. It's, you know, it's funny.
If you say so.
I said so.
Okay.
And I am the doctor here, so I'm going to play that card. I'm not playing that card. It's a horrible card to play. But I am Dr. Corinne Brittany. And you are?
Just Brittany.
Just Brittany. So, as it turns out, this is, we're so excited to be back. We're sorry we left you all hanging the last time. Thank you so much to our listeners who continue to listen to us, apparently on repeat, because we haven't produced anything new in a bit, but we're going to try to make this a seasonal thing. So, probably 12 to 20 episodes per season.
You're really like committing hard to the numbers here.
Well, I mean, what else are we going to do with our lives? There's a lot of news. There's a lot of changes coming up. There are a lot of things that have happened. And
are we shifting to being a news and political podcast?
No. Who said we were doing that?
Well, you just said there's a lot of news.
There's a lot of news for us, news about us.
Oh, I thought you meant like in the news.
So as you may or may not know, we moved to Colorado a couple years ago. And since the last time we spoke, we have bought a new place.
And a new puppy.
We bought a new place back in Orange County, California. And we can't wait to get back there. But a lot of the things that I do in Colorado aren't going to exist in California. So hence the reemphasis on the podcast. Why don't you tell people about our new puppy?
I mean, his name is Baymax, and he's pretty cute, and I'm his favorite.
Baymax. Where have I heard that name before?
From Big Hero 6.
Oh, the big white, inflatable, adorable Baymax.
Yes, the Disney movie.
The Disney movie.
And you can meet him at Disneyland.
You can meet our dog at Disneyland?
No, you can meet Baymax, the real Baymax.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that. That's one of my favorite movies.
I know. That was one thing that you said you wanted to do last time we were there, and you didn't do it.
It was a long line.
I don't even think you went over to where the line was.
I knew it was going to be a long line.
Probably, yeah.
For me, anything more than like 5 people in line is a long line.
Well, Disneyland may not be the place for you then.
I figured that out a long time ago when I worked there. Now, don't get me wrong. I love Disneyland. I love going, but... it's gotten so crowded. So, year in recap. I figured that's kind of a good way to get things started off because a lot's happened since the last time we were on here. And we have a list of things that are kind of highlights, if you will.
Well, we found it on the internet.
Well, I didn't say we wrote the list. I said we had a list.
I know, but I don't want people to
think
that we decided what this list was.
We did not decide what the list was.
But there were some things I knew on the list and other things I didn't know on the list. But you probably knew everything on the list. No? You watch the news like every single day.
I do. But it doesn't mean I know everything that's on the list.
Yeah, but...
And I edited the list a little bit. I only put on some stuff that I thought was kind of relevant. So we're going to go through that and just kind of talk about what's happened since the last time we talked, thoughts, opinions on each of these. We're not telling you what to think, but these are things that could be thought about. I could tell you that.
So just to think.
Yeah. We are telling you to think. If that's the one takeaway from this program, it is to stop and think about things. So, hey, which item on this list did you know a little bit about?
I feel like we should just go through the list. Like, that's going to be easier than trying to, like, cherry pick.
Okay. So this is a list. This is some top stories from 2023 in the LGBTQ community.
But some are not.
Some are not?
One is not. One that I'm assuming you added. I don't know. Let's just go through the list.
I just copied and pasted what you sent me from the internet.
Okay. Well, you said you added stuff.
No, I arranged it and I excluded some stuff.
Oh, okay. Then never mind.
All right. Number 1. Lesbian mom loses parental rights and wife to child sperm donor.
Oh, I feel like this one needs context.
Well, give us some context.
Oh, I read this like a couple days ago at 8 a.m. when I was still sleepy.
So while you're looking up some of that context, see, lesbian loses parental rights to child sperm donor. I can kind of see what that means. And that would be horrible. But I didn't read the second part. And wife.
They're dating. The child's biological mother and the sperm donor are dating.
Oh, so they're no longer in a relationship, but still the parental rights went back to the sperm donor? I guess, I mean, if they're in a relationship, it kind of makes sense that not taking away the rights of the mom, if that was set up at birth, this is the other parent. I don't know. There's some backstory or context that definitely needs to happen with that story into what was the arrangements of who was carrying, what were the parental rights going to be decided before the child was born.
Well, it looks like that even though she was on the birth certificate, she didn't adopt him before they split up.
See, that seems so strange to me because if they're on the birth certificate, that strikes me that she should retain parental rights.
I don't know if it's state specific.
What state did that happen in?
Oklahoma.
Oh. Well, that goes back to something we've definitely learned throughout this past year is what state you're in matters a lot.
I don't know. I guess it was decided by a judge, though, like a county district judge.
That's an Oklahoma thing. It's for sure. Well, that'll be interesting to see if that makes its way up through the courts and gets appealed. But even then, it's a conservative court system all the way up to the top from there. So,
well, and it's also, I don't know. I feel like anytime you have custody stuff, it's always like family court is just very messy.
It is. It is messy. But again, it goes back to if someone's on a birth certificate and it was decided originally that these people would be the parents, regardless of how the baby came into existence, I just got shocked by my microphone. It's almost like we have dogs running around on the carpet or something like that, increasing static electricity.
We do. They're playing.
I wonder how much you can hear that in the background. Well, if you can hear that in the background, you're welcome.
It's just what is it? MMA fight in the background? I don't know. WWE? Is that wrestling?
It's definitely a fight to the death.
No, it's not.
No, but they use teeth, and I just kind of
but one of them has less sharp teeth now than he used to.
That's true. Puppy teeth, absolute worst.
He just has one that's hanging on for now.
Wow, he's getting aggressive. He definitely has little man syndrome.
No, he doesn't. They're just playing.
Okay. Let's see. Going down, next one on the list. George Santos expelled from Congress.
This list says from the House.
Well...
Whose house?
I would assume it's the House of Congress.
Is he having marital troubles as well?
Oh,
is he married?
Is it like a ballroom house? No, he's not married.
No.
And even if he was, is he really? Who knows?
I don't know.
George Santos, you fabulous queen. You're an idiot. You're an idiot. And you brought dishonor on that's saying something if you brought dishonor on Congress.
Why was he expelled from the House? The ones I feel like you altered this list so that the things that I know about are things that you did not include. But we'll see. I'm trying to find the George Santos one on this.
So George Santos, God, I wish I had his drag queen name. Oh, I wish I had his drag queen name handy, but I don't. So he lied about pretty much everything in his past to get elected to office. All just a scheme, just a walking con man. And But Republicans were so short on votes, and he was a Republican, they kind of protected him and stood by him, and they kept voting not to expel him. This was like the third vote they had to expel him from Congress.
How many times do you need to vote about the same thing, though?
Apparently, a few times.
The vote was 311 to 114.
Well, they kept saying in the previous ones, they were like, well, he's never been convicted of a crime and he hasn't been through the House Ethics Committee, so we shouldn't get rid of him, even though he's been indicted for multiple crimes. And that's just, to be fair, that's a fair point. You shouldn't kick someone out from Congress unless they've been convicted of a crime or something like that.
What crime has he been convicted of?
Oh, God. Like
he's not in jail.
Wire fraud, money. He hasn't been convicted of anything yet.
So then he's technically still innocent?
Until proven guilty. But that's one of those where it's so obvious he's lying. Like, it's so obvious to everyone he's lying. And not small crimes. We're talking like money laundering, wire fraud, like the stuff that sent Al Capone away for sure.
Well, it makes sense that if you were in a government position, like a public office, that you should be held to. I mean, like, to put him on suspension so he can't.
Right. So
I feel like if you had like a coworker, not a coworker, but if you had an employee and they were like engaged in questionable behavior that related to their job performance, then you would probably suspend them with pay, because we pay people.
Right. So that's where he went to the House Ethics Committee, and they finally House that's not a simple thing to say for me. Apparently, the House Ethics Committee said no, this person is definitely done wrong. And so they use that as the final justification that he should be gone. But here's what I find fascinating about that. You said the vote was 300 something to 100 something. 100 people, all Republicans, I'm guessing, but I know it's all Republicans, said, even though we know you lied to be here, you lied to all of the constituents to get this office, you've committed these crimes. We know, we've seen the evidence of these crimes, that you committed these horrible acts. Even though you are that depraved, we still want you in Congress. That's just,
but does someone replace it? Like, what is
the process
is Florida
now? So,
voting or something?
So he's a New York congressman.
He's not Florida?
Nope, New York.
Who's Florida?
I don't know. 13 other Congress people.
Who's the mayor of Florida?
Do you mean the governor of Florida?
Maybe.
Ron DeSantis?
And who are we talking about?
George Santos.
Oh,
I see how you got there.
Okay.
And that goes to a whole nother theory I have about Ron DeFascist and why he's so anti-LGBT.
Well, we don't need to call names.
I just want to clarify that I
know,
believe
but
he
don't
is
call
a fascist.
Names.
Okay.
You could say that, but don't be like name calling.
Okay. I can see how you got there, because George Santos is I feel like could be Ron DeSantis' alter ego for sure. Anyway, so he gone. Let's see. 7.2 Gallup, who is that's a notable research service. Gallup, I feel like that's one that's been around for a very long time.
They do polls.
They do polls. They're a polling organization. Finds that 7.2% of people in the United States identify as LGBTQ. That's high.
How much was it before?
I don't know.
That seems low.
Like, even when I was like rough estimating, like if I'm in a group of people, I like to say that maybe like on a good day, I'll exaggerate to maybe 5% of America is LGBTQ. But apparently it's much higher than that, which is fabulous, which is wonderful. Because that number doesn't mean that there are more LGBTQ people than there were before. It means that more people feel safe to outwardly share that that's who they are.
Well, but this is what I don't understand.
Okay.
These polls don't go to everybody.
No, they're a representative sample.
I know. So, like, I'm sure there's a whole.
There is a science behind this.
I know, but it's just.
How large is the sample size?
I can't find. Somebody changed the order of the list, so now I'm like trying to scroll to up and down to try to find which article was where.
So if it's a sample size,
okay, hang on.
Of at least 1,000 people. So background while you're looking.
Hang on, I found it.
Okay, fine.
It's only a slight increase from 7.1% in 2021.
Oh, wow.
It's more than double what it was a decade ago. And it included 10,000 adults nationwide via telephone interviews, which I'm sorry, like the people who answer telephones and actually want to talk to people, there should be a poll about that. Because how did you find 10,000 people who want to talk to you on the phone? Probably calling from a number they didn't know. I don't even know how this gets done. We have email and text messages, and they're still doing phone calls.
Okay.
Sorry, that was a...
No, tell us how you really feel about the polling industry.
No, it's not the polling industry. It's random people calling me.
Oh, okay.
That's how I feel about that.
Well, I think 10,000 is a massive sample size when it comes to polling. And what you'll find in polling is based on the size of the sample rate, that's how they'll actually say basically the degree of liability. So like plus or minus 3%, plus or minus 2%, and so on. And there's actually kind of a set number. I don't know them off the top of my head, but basically a sample size of 1,000 would be accurate to plus or minus 4%. 2,000 would be like plus or minus 2%. By the time you get 10,000, you're pretty much spot on right there. That's a really accurate sample size. It'd be interesting to see the identifications that people identify as in that. I'm sure that's probably available.
Like in the
LGBTQ, like how many people identify as LGBTQ?
Yeah, so it says more than half or 4.2% of all U.S. adults identify as bisexual. 1 in 5 LGBT adults identify as gay. 1 in 7 say they are lesbian. And slightly fewer than 1 in 10 identify as trans. And roughly 1 to 2%. Oh, sorry, that was the wrong statistic. But there's a very small percentage in there that's like pansexual, asexual.
Okay. Well, that's a lot of people. So for all those conservatives freaking out about how many queer people there are in America, let's just do the quick math. 7% of 300 million would be roughly 21 million people.
Well, but it's different based on age. Gen Z is almost 20%. Millennials are 11%.
That's incredible.
And then the old folks are 3.3 or less percent. Old folks being everyone who's older than a millennial.
20% of Gen Z identifies somewhere in the rainbow.
So 19.7%.
Wow.
Those born between 1997 and 2004. So these are people who are age 18, 19 to 25, 26.
Wow. So I wonder if it's even more so for people younger. They can't poll people that are younger with those kind of questions. That's fascinating. I guess that also kind of explains the increase in resistance for getting, in so many state legislatures across America, people fear we're losing cis heteronormativity, maybe.
I don't know. Bisexual seems to be the most highly identified identity.
That's interesting.
So of the 19% for Gen Z, 13.1 identify as bisexual. Of the 11% for millennials, 6.9. Even Gen X, 3.3% total, 1.6 is bisexual.
Wow.
And then there's a there's a more of an even mix with the boomers, where they're at 2.7%, and their breakdown is 7% lesbian, 0.7% lesbian, 1% gay, and 0.7% bisexual.
That's a lot. That's something.
So,
all right. More on that topic or on to the next?
we can move on.
All right. Where do you want to go next?
Just what's next in the list.
A renaissance of gay literature marks a turning point for publishing.
Where is that?
Well, on this list, on this piece of paper, it's the third one down.
Oh, okay. Oh, you skipped that.
Yeah, I thought I'd come back to it.
Okay.
So this is a fascinating story. And there's another one on here, too, that we'll talk about. Book challenges reach historic heights. American Library Association reports. This conversation around literature and books, I think, will go down as one of the most important stories of 2023. Not because all the laws that are passed or all the new things, all the new attacks on the civil and human rights of LGBTQ people, but this is the reintroduction of book bans. And when you say book ban, if you don't have a visceral reaction to that, then I think you need to maybe question your ethos. You need to question what it is you believe. Because if we're banning literature, I think that's just kind of going to set up the path of our society for the next 20, 30, or 40 years.
You got this from the article?
No, this is just something that's been kind of common knowledge amongst.
Oh.
You're like, where is that in the article?
Yeah, so I have been paying attention to anything you said because I've been trying to find it so I can provide more information. And apparently there's no information to provide. You've
known that school boards have been banning books pretty heavily this past year?
Yes.
They've been criminalizing, providing books in libraries. That some librarians have been fired for...
school librarians or just regular librarians?
School librarians and like county, because libraries are generally like quasi-governmental funded organizations. So if you have the right people in town, city, county leadership and school boards, they can dictate what is and what isn't allowed to be on their shelves.
So can we also combine this with the one that was on the list?
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. Combining the one on the list. This is book challenges reach historic highs.
Okay. Well, to give it context, last year, there were 1,269 challenges to remove. Oh, wait a second. This is confusing. I don't know. Last year, there were 1,269 challenges to remove 2,500 titles. And they're saying that this year, it's going to surpass that.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's the end of the year now, and obviously this article was not written in November or December 2023, but
it definitely is. We're seeing this rise, and the standard by which books are being removed is, if it wasn't terrifying, I would say laughable. Most of the states and county local governments who have said that we're going to allow books to be banned have set the criteria of any parent who requests a book to be banned is a valid request and the book will be banned.
Okay, so this says from January to August, there were 695 attempts to censor various books or library materials across the country. Last year, in the same time period, there was 681. So it doesn't seem like a huge... This problem has been happening.
Well, this is where you run into a problem of there's only so many queer books. And it's not just queer books that are being banned. It's books that... It's Toni Morrison stuff from the 70s that's being banned. Because people find it offensive. And this is where it goes back to, do you believe in freedom or not? Do you believe in liberty or not? Because it's these people who argue that under the banner of liberty, kids should be free from this indoctrination, so-called indoctrination. The irony, of course, in this is you taking away a person's ability to read a book is It's fascism. I'm sorry. It's literally fascism. You deciding what another child's book can, or another child that isn't yours can or can't read. You're seeking to take away that parent's rights to decide what's best for their children. This stems into medical care as well. If you think about it, these people who are passing like bans on medical care and so on, they are saying that the state knows best what medical care should be provided for a kid, legislators versus the parent of a child. That's just, there's no freedom in that. There's no liberty in that. But this book ban rise does terrify me.
Well, and this says over half of the books challenged in 2022 have LGBTQ themes.
Yeah, that's definitely a primary target. And yet, when liberal parents say, okay, fine, if you're going to ban that book, I want to ban the Bible because it contains sexuality, violence, murder, and indoctrination teachings, they're just laughed at. And it's like, it's a complete double standard. Now, I happen to enjoy the Bible. I think it's a good read. I think there are lessons in there that we can all learn from. But ultimately, it comes back down to if we take away a person's access to information, then we are taking away their ability to think. Now, the funny part about this, one of the organizations that was kind of chief behind these book bans was Moms for Liberty. And they made the news recently because the founder of Moms for Liberty and her husband, to no surprise, were appointed to a school board by Ron DeSantis in Florida.
I was going to say in New York, not Florida, but apparently I just can't seem to.
Santos. Come on. It's a vow. Anyways, so they made the news recently because apparently the husband really wanted to have a threesome with him and his wife, with his wife and this other woman. And the other woman, who is, the founder for Moms for Liberty, decided last minute, no, I'm not that into it. And so then the husband just allegedly had sex with this other woman against her will because she only wanted to participate because the other woman was going to be involved.
How do you know so much about this?
It was in the news a lot.
This is on the news?
Yeah, isn't that funny? And the reason why it's not on the news is this seems like a very personal thing to be broadcast in the news. But the reason why it's on the news is because of the hypocrisy. You're telling us that, we only want books in our schools that promote moral behavior by your definition of morality. But you don't even recognize your own definition of morality. So it's a hypocrisy thing. So then it gets reported. So, book bans, bad. Queer books, good. And that's what one of the other stories here is talking about, the renaissance of gay literature. More and more we're seeing this.
Didn't we just talk about this?
Well,
I'm so confused by your list now.
Okay. I will stop jumping after this one. So at the same time, while books are being banned, more and more books are being written by queer authors. And this is fantastic. More and more of them are being published online. More and more of them are available via ebooks and methods that states can't regulate, at least not yet. So that's been a really kind of positive spin on this, is as people have been cracking down on literature, more authors have been out there sharing their stories or other helpful information to the community online so people can get access to those. So that's fantastic news. You can take the next one, because the next one I just want to roll my eyes at.
Well, my paper's on the floor now.
Well, you could I'll grab it.
I have dogs.
This just in.
Oh my gosh. Bud Light partnership with trans influencer Dylan Mulvaney prompts right-wing backlash.
Oh, Kid Rock. Kid Rock, and you're shooting up the case of Bud Light that you've bought. Talk about wasting money. Spend money to buy a pack of case of Bud Light to shoot it with ammunition that you bought.
What does Kid Rock have to do with anything?
So, as you may or may not know, the start of this, why don't you give us the background of the story of Dylan Mulvaney and how she became a spokesperson for Bud Light, and then I will.
I think it was just that Bud Light was, I don't know, like how did like Britney Spears become someone for Pepsi? The same way.
Yeah. So Budweiser, generally speaking, isn't stupid. I just think they underestimated the vitriol against the queer community in America right now. As we've talked about before on this show, queer marketing or marketing to queer people, LGBTQ people, is a gold mine. Generally speaking, LGBTQ families are dual income, higher income. There's also the opposite extreme of that, and I acknowledge that, and I recognize that. But when it comes to marketing, we're big spenders. We're big spenders when it comes to things, and Bud Light wanted to tap into that. They wanted to say, hey, we're a queer-friendly brand. Please drink our product. Lots of jokes could be made about why the queer community would like Bud Light, otherwise known as disgusting water. I digress on that. So they came out with this inclusion, and Dylan Mulvaney apparently, I hadn't heard of her before. Not on the TikTok or anything like that. I'm not a big fan of people that use their status as a trans person or a queer person to build celebrity either. I don't think that's. I don't know. That feels weird to me. You are who you are. You don't need to like monetize that. But there was a big backlash of people who drink Bud Light, and it kind of started with Kid Rock as the first person to really come out and say, Bud Light, what the fuck? And he did so in a video he posted online where he took a case of Bud Light and used his automatic AR and shot it up to say, that's what I think of Bud Light. Now, he advocated for a boycott against Bud Light. And the irony of this, of course, is the bars he owned never actually pulled Bud Light. And he's since come around and said, well, we'll just keep carrying Bud Light. But he wanted to show how angry he was that they would possibly be supportive of a member of the queer community. Part of me wonders if it was a different member of the queer community, if there would be the vitriol there is against it.
Well, here's the thing. So I Googled while you were talking. When did this?
Was it July?
Hang on. This was April 5th. Okay, so this article that I just found is April 25th, but it says that they have been in a decline and that like Modelo is kind of beating them out.
Yeah.
And so it seems like this is not the only thing that they have done to try to get more consumers.
Yeah, no. Absolutely.
So it's a business. I mean, it's a business thing.
Yeah, it's a business decision. But then Bud Light screwed up.
I mean, sales were down like 30% year over year.
Right. Because
is a lot. That's a lot.
Which is huge because of this outlash and this boycott that people, cried out Bud Light. The reason why that boycott worked is because Bud Light succumbed to the pressure. They said, okay, we'll stop talking about this. We'll stop promoting this. And now everyone that was on the boycott was like, yeah, it works. Let's keep boycotting. Let's keep that going. Had they responded, fuck you, we will support everyone who wants to drink our drinks, the boycott would have been useless, meaningless. And people would have realized that boycotting was stupid, so you might as well just grow up and drink the beer you want to drink because you like the beer. Again, if you like Bud Light, really? I mean, really? Anyways. Okay, so Pride Month boycotts.
I mean, there's always, I think, been a lot of, consumerism and capitalism when it comes to Pride Month.
Yeah.
But even I think this year was more specific where, you've got a retailer like Target who's had Pride merch for
a long time,
a while. But then like some of their Pride merch wasn't okay. And then they couldn't put Pride merch in certain sections of the store. And so it just, the argument and the back and forth about, companies who are doing, rainbow marketing.
Yeah.
And I don't just like, there's just a lot more nuance to, obviously we can't necessarily stop a company from supporting or not supporting a certain thing. But I think people really tried to come at Target this year and get them to force their hand.
So what I think is so fascinating about this topic is it seems like people felt more empowered to go into their stores, shoot videos, and bitch and moan about clothes or toys or whatever that might actually appeal to queer kids. That's what we saw. These conservative people going into these stores saying, "Oh, look how horrible this is." And what they're really saying when they do that is these kids don't deserve to have clothes or toys. Ultimately, and maybe this is a little of a stretch, these kids don't deserve to exist. And that, I think, has really taken a lot of companies off guard, the vitriol. And because we have separated ourselves so dramatically into these polar groups, that kind of behavior, if you don't ever act with that kind of behavior, if you don't ever actually interact with members of the other group, is celebrated, is accepted. If all your friends are conservatives and hate LGBTQ people, you get to act like that and they get to go, fuck yeah, I love you, you're right. We've separated ourselves, not just in our minds or anything like that anymore, but we have literally divided ourselves as a country to where behavior like that exists and can be celebrated and can be condoned at the very least. And that's terrifying. But I think we kind of saw a manifestation of that this past week with Nikki Haley talking about the Civil War and slavery, but not talking about slavery. She was scared to offend their primary voter by saying slavery is bad. Imagine that. There is a political party in our country right now where their nominee for president or the person running for nominee for president can't say slavery is bad and have a chance of winning. It's just, oh my God, I can't believe we've gotten there. Anyway, so that's
you took an interesting direction.
I took an interesting turn there. No, I understand that.
But it's, I mean, there's just a lot more pressure on companies to, I think, essentially pick a side. Disney, they wanted Disney to pick a side and ended up starting a war with someone whose name ends with an S in Florida. And then I think the Dodgers came under fire. And, I think there were issues with hockey where they wouldn't allow rainbow tape, but they on their sticks.
Right.
But they'll allow other branded tape, like, I don't know, whatever the hockey version of like Nike or Adidas is. And like Pride jerseys where like you can't have a Pride jersey, but they have different jerseys for other, like there was just a whole lot of like nuanced discussion over the past year about what is okay to support, how do you support, and what do, consumers or fans or whatever, how do they get to kind of weigh in on what's going on and how these things are kind of played out.
And I think it goes back to the real tragedy of it is, up until really this past year or two, people felt like they weren't allowed to say, I don't want LGBTQ stuff in sports, or I don't want LGBTQ stuff in Target or whatever. But they kept their mouths shut because they knew it back then. At least they knew that's I'm not allowed to really say that because society has deemed that inappropriate.
Is it that, or is it just that so like in terms of sports, if there's a Pride night, cool, it's a night, it's a game.
Right.
I don't have to engage with that.
Right.
But now it's not a night. you know, or a month or a specific section in the store. Now it's like more throughout the store. Now this player wants to put tape on their stick the whole time. Now it's bleeding out of the confined zone that it's been in, where it's been allowed to thrive. And maybe it's bleeding out too much for other people who are uncomfortable with it.
And this is where it goes into like the dynamics of oppression. And like, do I feel oppressed because I have to allow this thing and it exists outside this space? We'll talk more about that in future episodes. But it's war now. I'm telling you, I'm not saying go out there and buy guns and do anything violent. I'm not. I don't condone violence. But if you haven't figured it out, a war is coming.
Well, we're gonna go to Disneyland's Pride Night this year.
Yes, we are. And we're gonna wear bulletproof vests. Okay.
No, we're not. It's gonna be too hot for that.
That's fair. All right. Let's see. Supreme Court rules for web designer who refused to work on same-sex weddings. Just in case you weren't aware, this one in the news. This is the first time the Supreme Court has ever ruled on a hypothetical. The case that was brought was someone who wasn't even approached.
Which, how can you even do that if it's not real?
It's stupid. And anyway, so this person said, well...
Doesn't the Supreme Court, were they just in a slow season?
Zero shits anymore about anything.
But how do they have... Don't they have real, actual things with real people?
You'd think, once again, elections have consequences. So anyways, they say, well, it's not hypothetical. Technically, this person approached me to design a wedding website. Well, then news actually found that guy who's not gay. And he said, what the fuck are you talking about? I never talked to anyone. So they lied to get a case in front of the Supreme Court to get this ruling. So that should tell you everything you need to know about the enemy. Now, ending on a bit of goodness.
Well, wait, hang on a second. I feel like that whole situation was not very clear. So I feel like we should just...
I found myself too passionate to talk about it, so you talk about it.
I'm just saying that on ideological lines, as a creative professional, you would have free speech under the Constitution's First Amendment to refuse to endorse any message that you disagree with. And that could then allow creative businesses to kind of pick and choose who their clientele are in a discriminatory manner in up to 29 states. Yeah. So it opens the door for more discrimination and, more challenges between consumer and business owner.
Yep.
And I feel like that was, at least now it's much more better explained.
I agree. So why don't we end with, two more stories.
No, one more story.
I thought it was the Pope one and then the blood one.
No, we're not going to talk about the Pope.
Okay. Why don't you talk about the blood one?
FDA policy is allowing more gay and bisexual men to donate blood. Which is, I think just from a leap in sexuality and sexual practices in general, that's a good thing. Because the reason that gay men or men who have sex with men can't donate blood is largely based on how they would engage in sexual activity, because the way that they would engage in sexual activity, because the various body parts that are involved, are more prone to being able to receive or transmit any sort of STI.
Yeah.
So the fact that, the FDA is now saying, hey, we can allow some of these people who have not been allowed to give blood. It's a good thing.
This one was a long time coming.
Though it permits donations from men in monogamous relationships with other men. So there's that caveat.
Yeah.
You're in a monogamous relationship, which would reduce the risk of any sort of
STD.
Yes. Or those who have not recently engaged in anal sex.
Yeah.
Which I would imagine, and I'm sure I could find this out more for sure, but you can't go donate blood a year after you've had a tattoo.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, you can't, because there was a needle, and tattoos are a way to transmit things that you don't want. And so,
oh, that's a fair point. Same thing with probably intravenous drugs and that kind of thing too.
yeah, although I don't know. I don't know if intravenous drugs is on the form, but there's caveats, for
Health
different
and safety
things.
reasons. Yeah.
And one of those is if you've had a tattoo within the last year, you can't donate blood. And if you have had a tattoo, they want to know like when the date was so they can like be sure.
But this is more than just not trivial, because there's nothing trivial about it. But this is more than just we're happen to be changing the rules. This is righting a wrong that occurred.
It's a step forward, because righting the wrong would be
treating gay people the exact same way as straight people.
Right, because you could have, promiscuous straight people. You could have straight people who like anal, which, is partially how these things are transmitted. Yeah. So I think it's definitely a step forward. And it's nice because it allows more people to donate blood or to, help out.
Definitely. Though
I learned apparently that things that are donated are still paid for. Because I learned this on Sherlock. So now I'm wondering like,
oh, trust everything that you
No, but on Sherlock it was the mystery was that there was this dead body who was an organ donor but wasn't really an organ donor. But turns out the hospital had to pay for the tissue that the organ donor donated. Because there's a middleman, of course. Right, so now, of course, I'm sitting here wondering, going, how much is like a pint of blood worth that a hospital has to pay for, because it has to go through all these different channels of, consumerism.
If you think about it, that does
capitalism.
Kind of make sense.
That was the word I wanted.
Because people are generally paid to donate blood. They're certainly paid to donate plasma.
Not blood. You're not paid to donate blood unless maybe you have like a special type, but that's incentive to get more quantity of what's needed.
I get paid in cookies. Anyways,
no.
But yeah, people are incentivized in some way, if not paid, but certainly for plasma and other things. These donations,
I think plasma is like
these
more
donation
of a...
centers employ people. Yeah. They employ the nurses to do the things, and so basically all that money is ultimately passed back to the person paying for the blood.
Which was my,
which ultimately is passed to the end user, who didn't necessarily know that pint of blood was $500.
It was just interesting to realize that a donation goes through all these different channels, of which there's still people who are exchanging money. Like, it's not, a donation is free, but it's not actually
stupid doctors want to get paid.
I don't know. So
anyways, that was a good way to end this episode, talking about the positive of gay men can now donate blood. That was a long time coming. I think it is absolutely righting a wrong that existed in the past, especially given the ability we have to screen blood these days. There's really no excuse not to allow that. And you're opening up donations from a community that is excited to give. And I think that's just going to be a win for everyone all the way around. Should have happened sooner. Anyway, so this was episode 1 of season 2. We're back. We're looking at every other week. We're going to be dropping a new episode. Please keep listening to us. Please tell your friends. Please like us. Please give us a 5-star rating. Drop us a note. Tell us how much you hate us, love us, or otherwise. Brittany doesn't like knowing how much people hate them.
True. Or like me. True.
Also true. And we'll see you later. Bye.
Bye.